Let me tell you, there are some moments in life when you just know deep in your bones, this can't be real. I must be getting punked. For me, that moment was the night I came home after 3 weeks on the road, walked into my own $1 million house, and found a full-blown dinner party raging in my living room. And right at the center of it all, Cordelia Thorne, the HOA president from hell, the kind of woman who'd fine you for breathing funny on community grass, wrapped in my late grandma's silk bathrobe, holding my best wine, entertaining her friends like she was Lady Grantham. And I was the butler she forgot to fire. And the kicker. She saw me, keys in hand, jaw hanging, screamed into her phone, "Yes, 911, there's a burglar breaking in right now." Cops showed up with lights flashing and hands on their guns, ready to drag me, the actual homeowner, off my own porch. Can you imagine? The gall. But you know what? Cordelia didn't count on security cameras. Everywhere. Footage so clear you could read her lipstick brand. What happened next? Pure, unfiltered nuclear revenge and a lesson in karma Cordelia Thorne will never forget. But before we get to that sweet taste of justice, let me back up. The question is always, how the hell did I get here? So hi, I'm Braxley Whitmore, 47, cybersecurity consultant by day, chronic overthinker by night. 3 months back, my grandma passed and left me her $1.2 million Tudor mansion in Millfield Heights, Colorado. Place is straight out of a storybook, old stonework, real wood carvings, mountain views to die for. Should have been a dream, right? Instead, I walked straight into suburban hell, wrapped in a $340 monthly HOA bill and rules written by someone who failed out of the Fun Police Academy. See, Millfield Heights is where rich retirees go to water their lawns and judge each other's mailbox font. Average home, 600 grand. Average resident empty nester with a spotless SUV and a chip on their shoulder about anyone who doesn't play by the rules, which brings us back to Cordelia. She's been HOA president for 6 years, presides like a queen, and her main hobbies include wielding a clipboard and policing porch lights. By day, she's a struggling realtor. By night, she becomes this lurking suburban nightmare who measures grass with a ruler and knows exactly how much your holiday wreath weighs. Now, Cordelia lives in a basic $450,000 ranch house, but you could smell her envy every time she passed my place. The kind of envy that makes people do stupid, vindictive things. It took her about 8 weeks to show her hand first by citing me for my garden gnome being 2 inches too tall. That's right, apparently the gnome police are real and they live right next door. $75 fine plus $25 a day until I corrected the violation. Didn't know gnome height was a public menace. Me neither. Next came the doormat. Excessive wear patterns. Another $75. For a mat, you literally wipe your dirty boots on. Then she hit me with the big one. My porch light wasn't period appropriate for 1920s architecture. My grandma picked that light in '87, but apparently Cordelia knew better. And every morning at 7 a.m. like clockwork, she'd march past my house, clipboard sanitized. I kid you not. She'd bleach it after every patrol, trailed by her 2 minions, Martha and Bob, whispering and pointing out every flaw on my property. What really got me? She only ever targeted the new folks, people who looked like they'd be too busy or too alone to fight back. Long-time couples with manicured lawns, never a peep. By October, I'd racked up 14 violations and almost $2,000 in fines, with threats to put a lien on my home if I didn't pay up. I could practically hear her cackling as I wrote those checks. Then one crisp morning, Mrs. Cecilia, the sweet old lady across the street, slipped me a note. Turns out she'd seen Cordelia prowling through my backyard during one of my business trips, snapping photos, building a case. That's when I realized this wasn't just petty harassment. She was out for blood. So when my biggest client called with a month-long audit in Austin, Texas, 45 grand on the line, I almost turned it down. But I needed that cash for legal fees, and more than that, I needed to fight back. Before I left, I installed security cameras, took pictures of every violation, and set up remote backups. Left October 12th, expecting to return November 15th. If only I knew what Cordelia had planned for my absence. You ever get that sense something's wrong before you see it? That's what I felt the night I pulled into my driveway at 11:47 p.m., 3 days early, running on caffeine and spite. The porch lights were blazing, but I hadn't set the timer. Cordelia's silver Lexus was parked in my driveway. Through the window, I caught flickers of movement, shadows, laughter, music. Not the silence I'd left behind. I snuck up the walk keys and hand, heart thudding. Through the kitchen window, there she was. Cordelia, in my grandma's apron, arranging snacks like she was Martha Stewart wine glasses everywhere. Her two stooges, Martha and Bob, lounging on my furniture, pawing through my mail, even moving my family photos. My kitchen counter was littered with my grandma's prescription bottles, clearly opened. It was like a twisted dream. But here's where the story goes. Off the rails, Cordelia was holding court, telling everyone, get this. Oh, poor Braxley asked me to house sit. He worries so much about break-ins. She'd crafted a full cover story. She wasn't just trespassing. She was starring in her own soap opera as the helpful neighbor. I nearly lost it then and there, but training kicked in. Document first, confront later. I slipped down to the basement, up through Grandma's old coal chute phone, out camera rolling, and captured 12 minutes of her performance. When I finally confronted her the next morning, she didn't miss a beat. Opened the door in my grandma's robe mug in hand. Oh, Braxley, you're back early, she chirped as if I was the guest. I was just finishing my final house inspection. Found several concerning issues we need to discuss. Unbelievable. She tried to spin it like I was lucky to have her watching over things. Claimed I'd violated travel notification rules, that my cameras were a privacy invasion, produced a folder of evidence, loose screws she'd undone, leaves she'd stuffed in my gutters, water damage she'd created, gaslighting Sims VNs. I kept my cool, asked for everything in writing from my lawyer. The word lawyer wiped the smile off her face. She recovered, but not fully. I noticed Mrs. Cecilia watching from across the street, giving me a tiny nod. I wasn't alone. After Cordelia left, Mrs. Cecilia came over with a bombshell. Cordelia had been telling everyone I'd abandoned my home, that the HOA had to intervene, that I was in financial trouble, that I'd authorized her to pick up my mail, a federal crime, by the way. Neighbors saw her hauling out bags of my stuff, claiming it was storage help. She was building a case for adverse possession. If she could prove I'd abandoned the property, she could try to steal it outright. It hit me then this was a long con. She'd done this before. With Mrs. Cecilia's help, I started connecting the dots. Turns out Cordelia had a history of targeting vulnerable residents, especially the elderly. Her MO pile-up fines spread rumors, create evidence of neglect, then pressure people to sell cheap. She'd even run the same playbook on the Hendersons 2 years earlier. They ended up fleeing to Florida, selling their $700,000 home for $450,000 just to get away. That's when the neighborhood turned. Mrs. Cecilia introduced me to other victims. Bob Martinez, the retired accountant who'd tracked tens of thousands in missing HOA money. Dr. Patel, whose home office request was denied for no reason. Jennifer Kim, who'd recorded Cordelia threatening foreclosure over a vegetable garden. Suddenly, I wasn't just fighting for myself. We were building a war room, scanning financials, compiling legal documents, setting up hidden cameras. And that's where the universe handed me the mother of all plot twists. While sorting Grandma's papers, I found the original HOA founding docs. Turns out the HOA expired automatically after 40 years unless renewed by a supermajority. Nobody had renewed it. Cordelia's authority had been dead for 3 weeks. Every fine, every threat, every violation was legally worthless. She'd been operating as a fraud. Now you want poetic justice. Try walking into the emergency board meeting, TV crews rolling, neighbors packed into the school auditorium, Cordelia with her lawyer and private security acting like the queen she'd always wanted to be. I took the mic, projected the timeline. Ladies and gentlemen, our HOA no longer exists. Every action taken in the past month was illegal. Audible gasp. Then came the footage, Cordelia living in my house, drinking my wine, hosting her friends, pawing through my things. Then Bob Martinez with the receipts, $23,000, missing unauthorized payments to Cordelia's consulting firm. Dr. Patel explained how Cordelia systematically targeted minorities, single parents, anyone who wouldn't fight back. Cordelia lost it, grabbed the mic, started screaming about how she was the only thing standing between Millfield Heights and anarchy. Officer Rodriguez stepped up, told the room about Cordelia's 23 unsubstantiated complaints against neighbors, about her attempts to frame me, about the evidence of federal mail theft and breaking and entering. The crowd turned on her. People shared stories, threatened for wheelchair ramps, fined for kids' sidewalk chalk, humiliated over bird feeders. The avalanche had started and there was no stopping it. Officer Rodriguez read Cordelia her rights on the spot charges for fraud, trespassing, conspiracy, mail theft. Cordelia led away in handcuffs as 200 neighbors cheered. The satisfaction, I'm not ashamed to say, it was as sweet as Grandma's apple pie. But the lesson it crept up on me in the aftermath. You see, Cordelia didn't just weaponize rules, she weaponized trust. The desire to be a good neighbor. She took something meant to protect us and turned it into a tool for her own power, and nobody noticed until it was almost too late. That's the bitter truth about power. It doesn't always come with a warning label. Sometimes it looks like a clipboard and a smile. Sometimes it's just someone who knows you're too tired, too polite, too busy to fight back. In the end, justice was served. Cordelia's license revoked, felony charges filed, civil suits won. The HOA dissolved, replaced with a real neighborhood council focused on community, not control. We planted a garden where the rule book used to be, started a scholarship fund. I even made friends, real ones. Mrs. Cecilia's Sunday tea is the highlight of my week. Standing out in my garden today, the mountains blue and sharp in the distance, I think about all the people out there living under someone else's clipboard. Every neighborhood has its Cordelia. Sometimes it's your boss. Sometimes it's a board president. Sometimes it's the voice in your head telling you to play it safe and not rock the boat. But the only way things change, documentation, persistence, and a little help from your friends. So that's my story. I caught Cordelia red-handed, brought down her criminal empire, watched her get hauled off in front of everyone she ever tried to control. And honestly, wouldn't you love to see that happen in your town? But here's the real kicker. Cordelia only got as far as she did because nobody questioned the rules. Nobody read the fine print. Makes you wonder, how much power do we hand over every day without even realizing it? I'll leave you with that. What would you have done if you were me? Ever tangled with a petty tyrant, HOA or otherwise? Do you keep your head down or do you fight back? Drop your stories below. I want to hear your battles, your victories, your lessons learned. Let's remind the world your home, your rules. And sometimes karma really does come knocking.